Arribe. Welcome back to Beyond the Campfire. I am one of your hosts, Will. This is the other host here, Steven. Yeah, welcome back, S'mores. Today, Steven's got a really, really fun topic. If you couldn't already tell by my crappy Mexican attempt, we are talking about El Chupacabra.
Yes, the Chupacabra, a creature that first appeared in Puerto Rico, but as we'll talk about in a second, has been spotted in some instances, even worldwide. Uh, but yeah, it's a fairly recent cryptid. The first really real sighting was in about 1994, 1995, although some people claim to have seen it even in the 70s or the 80s. Uh, but yeah, El Chupacabra, we're going to get into the history behind it. We're going to get into the lore. And then finally, we're going to end this episode with whether we think it's real or not. So that's what we have for you today. And so, yeah, without further ado, Will, is there any announcements, things, or other things we need to say before we get into
Well, I felt like I was just in a Beyond the Culture episode there.
it?
Today we're going to cover this, and then we're going to cover this, and then we're going to cover this. Sparkles.
I think it helps people to get to know what they're getting into.
Oh
So,
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm your wacky host, Will, and this is your smart host, Steven.
something like
And
that.
this is Beyond the Campfire. Do-do-do-do-do.
We do need to get a theme song for this one too. So I just happen to have some audio files that I spent way too much money on back several years ago. But
Hey, listen, it beats just hearing William scream in the mic. The first thing he hears, Arribe, Arribe.
I know, right?
I don't even know what Arribe means. I failed Spanish.
Oh boy.
Did you know that?
So Aribe, I'm curious now. What does that mean? I'm
Did you?
learning Spanish through Duro. Wow, I'm saying it again, Duolingo, and it's
Duolingo?
been
Oh no,
going.
you gave in to the bird.
Aribe. Oh, apparently it means above.
Oh, so I just screamed above, above.
Above, yeah.
You know, I failed Spanish in high school.
So, Chupacabra, a creature that's become very popular. I first learned about the Chupacabra as a kid. So one of my favorite TV shows was Jackie Chan Adventures, and so I know Will said he's going to put up the images at some point of
Yep.
these two cartoons. But in the cartoon, our hero Jackie Chan was contacted by his friend El Toro, and El Toro is like, hey, there's this ancient evil called the Chupacabra that eats goats. Jackie Chan, I need you to come and help me defeat it. And so uh, that TV show took some liberties with that show. The Chupacabra, if it scratched somebody, that person would actually become a Chupacabra as well. Pretty much none of the legends have that being a thing, but
I thought the Chupacabra was just some crazy dog, not a werewolf.
I know, right? So
Flashback to Georgia cryptids.
right. So that was my first time I heard about a chupacabra. So it's definitely entered into the popular culture. There's a lot of songs and TV shows and things about it. But well, when did you first hear about a chupacabra?
I've kind of like always kind of heard the word about chupacabras. I used to watch this TV show when I was like a kid, called Expedition Unknown. I think it was Expedition Unknown. Anyways, there's this guy named Josh Gates. He's had a bunch of TV shows. I would love to have him on the podcast one day. He seems like a pretty cool guy. Um, and they would go to different, like they weren't like a, like watching Ghost Adventures or whatever. They go look for ghosts. They would go out and like look for ghosts, but they would also look for like the Yeti, or they would look for Chupacabra, or these different, or like the mermaids. Like there's mermaids that were spotted somewhere in the Mediterranean. But like that's kind of where I first heard about it. And I always kind of heard it was like this crazy dog that like ate goats
Yeah.
or sheep.
Neat, neat, yeah, and obviously you were much more into spooky stuff way before I was. So, yeah, that about checks out. But what is a chupacabra? So, it's one of those creatures where, depending on who has seen it and when they saw it, they will describe it very differently. Sometimes it's described more like a small type of dog. Other times, it kind of looks more reptilian. Some have even described it as looking very much like an alien, and we'll get into some of the theories of what it actually is in just a second.
Yeah, looking
But
at these photos, that definitely looks like some alien. I think what's funny about the photos you sent me, because I'm looking at the alien one now, just the way like he's just sitting like okay, I think the funniest one is popping up now. It's the one where like he's hunched over, he's got his hands on the sheep,
yeah,
and it's like let me pray for you, brother.
I know, right? As he's about to devour it. But um, I did find one kind of common theme throughout all the descriptions, even though it did sometimes vary greatly from description to description. But pretty much everyone agrees that it is a small to mid sized dog like creature with glowing red eyes, uh, leathery skin, and ta- uh, fangs and sharp fangs and talons with some spiky bristles running around its back. And so, whether you have a more alien like version of it, or a more reptilian like version, or even the more small dog version, I kind of tend to like the small dog version because, and I know Will's going to put up the things later, but if you're looking at this picture of this dog, to me, I could look at that and I say like, hey, yeah, that looks
Yeah,
like an animal that could actually exist. Like I could imagine
yeah,
walking into the wilderness of Puerto Rico and running into this thing. Whereas the alien picture, and we'll try to throw that up there as well. When you're looking at this one, it's just like, okay, well, I'm not necessarily expecting to run into this
yeah.
one.
It's
So
my
I
it's my
I personally find the ones where they describe it as a dog-like creature to be more convincing, at least on my part. And we'll get into whether we believe this thing actually exists or not in just a second. But the word chupacabra, was coined by comedian Silverio Perez, and he basically created the word from the Spanish word chupar, which means to suck, and don't edit that out of context. And then
all right, Haley. You
word,
know what to do.
and then the word cabra, which means goat. And so chuper and then cabra, when you combine them together, chupacabra, it pretty much literally translates to goat sucker. And the reason it was called that was, when reports of farm animals being attacked with two puncture wounds in their neck and all of the blood being sucked out of them were surfacing, Nasty is just like, okay, well, whatever this creature is, it's sucking the blood, it's sucking the life force out of these animals. So let's get into the history. Puerto Rico, you have in 1994, uh, you have reports of about 40 plus animals just mysteriously dead. When the bodies were examined, there had puncture wound holes um, in their body, and pretty much all of the blood had been sucked out of them.
Mm,
Uh, it's important to note nobody had seen what had done it, although some early reports claim that people heard it. So some people said that they heard the flap of leathery wings, or they heard it howl or scream into the night. But at least the first several instances of these dead farm animals turning up, the chupacabra was not seen, although it possibly was heard, which is going to affect my thinking of what happened in a second. But uh, yeah, Will, I know you are a farmer.
yeah.
If what are you thinking if you walk out to your farm and you just see one of your cows dead, puncture holes in its neck, all the blood gone? What are you thinking?
Damn, them vampires must be hungry.
I know, right? Yeah, it's
Better
just
it than me.
yeah. It is an
I
odd
don't like getting
sight.
sucked.
I mean, there are lots of things that could attack and prey on farm animals, but I think it's definitely the way that these farm animals died that caused people to take a step back and say, what on earth could have killed my farm animals, especially in this way?
Yeah, because as a farmer, like I've had cows. I think since helping my granddad on the farm since 2019, I think I've had 3 calves die. I think 3, and I've had about 2 cows die. The calves are usually the ones I usually lose, but it's been kind of weird to like lose, cows. And like I asked my granddad because I was like, did you check the body? Like, did you see what could have done it? You know, and then because that way I know what I need to do. We found out what did it, and I'm not gonna tell you what did it because I shot at that thing that did it, and I hit one of those things that did it. Didn't kill it, wounded it, but I'm not gonna tell you because then I'd be admitting to a crime. Leave it up for mystery.
There you go. So, Chupacabra. Eventually, people start to get suspicious. So there does start to be rumors swirling around Puerto Rico of, well, something is killing these animals, and they're doing it in a very brutal way. But what could it possibly be? And it's not too long after that sightings start to happen. So people start to report seeing a small to mid-sized animal that is almost entirely hairless, or at the very least, if it does have some hair, uh, most of the hair is gone. People describe it with either red glowing eyes or some kind of massive eyes, bigger than you would expect to be normal. And all of a sudden, these rumors of this creature now called the chupacabra starts to circulate. This mysterious animal creature that feeds on farm animals, that feeds on
Mm-hmm.
livestock and sucks their blood and whisks away into the night. So
He's
naturally,
thirsty.
I know, very thirsty.
He's
So,
thirsty, man.
but as we kind of get into this legend, and as it's spreading around, naturally theories start. So people are like, is this some sort of ancient evil? Is this some sort of ancient spiritual being? One thing that's popular in Puerto Rico at the time is, the Puerto Rican people are very, very religious. So most of them are Roman Catholics. However, many of them also follow some more spiritual traditions. Puerto Rico in general has a lot of influence from West African paganism. It has a lot of influence from, more local tribes, and a lot of these have culminated in a syncretic religion. Syncretic just basically being a syncretic religion called Santeria, which is a combination of West African beliefs, local tribal beliefs, and Roman Catholicism, and all of that's kind of mixed in together to create this piece. So, one of the theories is that the Chupacabra is this ancient spiritual being, this demon, and you'll have several descriptions of the Chupacabra being like a goat demon, and that's one of the more popular theories that floats around even to this day. If you go to Puerto Rico and if you ask people about the Chupacabra, many of them would believe it to be some sort of spiritual essence that is feeding against farm animals.
Man,
Another
you speak.
theory is that the Chupacabra is an experiment gone wrong. So they believe that the U.S. government kind of got a hodgepodge of a lot of different animals, and it created this thing that's like part dog, part reptile, part kangaroo, part bat. Like there's all, and again, the chupacabra has been described in a lot of different ways. So it's natural that people would think it's a hodgepodge thing, but they think eventually it escaped the U.S. government, and perhaps the government tried to kill it at some point, but it escaped. Several people saw it before it eventually died off in the wilderness. Uh, I really don't like that theory. Part of me,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I mean, that's not just because I'm the local government defender on on this podcast,
I
but
wouldn't put it past them.
yeah, but I'm just like, okay, even if we were to believe that the U.S. government were to create such a creature, my question is why
To attack Cuba.
to attack you? Maybe, I don't know.
Coming for you,
JFK
Fidel.
is JFK would like a word. Bay of Pigs invasion. Anyway,
The
we'll
Bay
save
of Chupacabra invasion.
we'll save the politics for my other podcast. But uh, yeah, I mean, I just don't really see the reason for why the U.S. government would create such a creature. If you want to make the argument that they're creating it as a weapon, I think we have way more powerful weapons than creating this hodgepodge creature of kangaroo, reptile, bat, dog ancestry.
Oh
Like
well,
that just
think about it. Think about it. Okay. You said this could have happened in the 70s or 80s. Cold War's going on, man. What's better, a nuke or a rabid dog that can fly?
I think the nuke's better. But
Would you, as a Russian, would you be scared like on patrol? You're just hanging out with your comrades, and then like you see this rabid, red-eyed creature coming at you that's going to suck your blood, or would you be more scared looking up at the sky and be like, "Oh, a nuke"?
okay, I mean that's fair. You watch you watch Stranger Things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Stranger
So,
Things.
so would you rather go up against a demo dog, or would you rather go up against a nuke?
Yes. Okay. See, so okay, when you put it like that, then that's fair. I
Fear
much would
factor.
rather fight a army of demodogs than, or no wait, I would much rather face a
Take a
nuke.
nuke to the face.
Yeah, yeah, I would rather take a nuke to the face than face an army of demodogs.
Like
Because
Chupacabras, just a
yeah,
whole. It's like the question: would you rather take on one nuke or 100 Chupacabras? I'll take the nuke, please.
for sure, man, for
By the
sure.
way, Stranger Things, that will be an episode at some point because that is based off of an actual U.S. conspiracy theory.
Right. Who is that guy that was introduced in season 4? He was really famous, and a spoiler alert. So if you don't want to get Stranger Things spoiled for you, maybe skip a few minutes ahead. But who is that guy? He led the Hellfire Club.
Oh, oh,
See, it's been a couple of years since I've watched
oh,
season 4. He was really popular. Was his name like Ed or something? Or am I
oh,
totally
yeah,
mixing
Eddie.
it up?
I didn't know you were talking about the actor or the character. I think the character's name is Eddie.
Eddie, yeah, I think it's Eddie. There was that meme that went around for a while. Somebody wake up. Da, da, da.
Christy, wake up!
Christy, yeah, Christy, wake up. I
I
don't
don't
like
like
this.
this.
Christy, wake
We're
up. Yeah,
gonna
that
get
dude.
copyrighted.
Well, anyway, but like, you know, again, so here's a spoiler warning. So if you don't want to get Stranger Things spoiled for you, but when he's getting torn apart by like by the demodogs, right?
The Demobats.
Or the demobats or whatever he was getting torn apart by. Like that's
Yeah.
terrifying. I'd
So
rather die
imagine
by
if
nuke.
those were Chupacabras and they all just started latching their teeth in and sucking you dry.
Right. So I don't know, man. So bringing it back to the chupacabra, like okay, maybe the U.S. government has some incentive for creating a terrifying creature, but I mean, I think if they were creating such a creature, I think they do a better job of having it not released into the wild. So that's probably my least
Yeah, you
favorite.
got to release into the ghetto because you
Yeah,
know
I
what
mean
the
that's
the
probably my
government
least.
hates more than the white people.
That's probably my that's probably my least favorite theory of
Yeah,
what the
that's possible.
chupacabra is. The final popular theory, well, actually, there's a couple others. Okay, let me just run through them really quick. So, the other theory is that the chupacabra is just simply an undiscovered species of coyote or
I like
something
that
similar.
idea.
Right, yeah. So, right, it's just like, okay, this is a creature that's always been around, and we're just discovering it now for whatever reason in the mid 1990s. And that one I don't like as much either.
It's kind of
If it has
boring.
been around, why is it attacking farm animals now? But I mean, it's possible. It's possible. And then the last one, this is becoming a common theme on this podcast, but aliens.
Steven finally says it.
The chupacabra is an alien. It's an extraterrestrial being that landed in Puerto Rico in the 90s, wreaked havoc for a while, and then eventually either die off or beamed into space somewhere.
He was
So
getting blood for experiments in a
there
spaceship.
you go. Need to get our tinfoil hats out to protect us from a possible chupacabra return.
Bright light appears behind me, and I get like sucked up.
I know, right?
You knew too much.
So whether it is a demon in the vein of some Santeria beliefs, or whether it is an alien or a U.S. government experiment gone wrong, um, I will admit this. I do think something weird happened between the period of 1994 to 1995 where several farm animals are dying. You have many people reporting this animal, and then you have the the mayor of a small Puerto Rican town, Kimo. What's his name? I think it's Kimo Soto. He's later nicknamed Kimo Jones after Indiana Jones, because he starts to lead a series of expeditions to go find the Chupacabra um, for several years, which actually helps his political prospects because he actually keeps getting reelected mayor, in part because people liked his adventures into the woods to try to find the Chupacabra. Um, but I digress. So yeah, I do think at least initially some kind of creature was there, and whether it was an alien visiting for a few months or whether it was a U.S. government experiment that the U.S. government eventually recaptured or killed,
Yeah.
something did happen. Eventually, once the Chupacabra story went viral, uh, whatever constituted viral back in the 90s, then you started to have people report seeing it in the United States and Canada and even places as far away as China. But to me, at that point, I'm just like, well, you heard about this thing, so I could. Of course, you're going to start seeing it now if you really want to believe it. So I'm not really convinced by those reports so much, but at least the very first few early ones, I'm just like, okay, there's something here. There's all these dead farm animals. You got to explain those. There's these people that, with some consistency, seem to be explaining it pretty normally, and um, I'm not going to claim I know what exactly it was, but
Yeah.
I do think there was enough stories, there was enough news reports, and there was enough dead farm animals. The dead farm animals are the one that mostly pique my interest for me to say, okay, there was something that happened. Will, do you have any thoughts?
I think, I mean, I definitely, that's the thing is like, I feel like with, you know, you're like, okay, if this is a new creature, then how come nobody saw it? Why is it just now being reported? And that's where it's like, it's kind of like for me, when our cows died, you know, I look at the body and I'm like, okay, I don't see any visible wounds. I don't know what could have got it. Maybe the Chupacabra is a species we've never been able to identify, and it's been around a lot longer, but no farmer really just thought to kind of come out and report it. And it probably didn't gain steam till, the 90s when, telephones and the internet was coming out. Maybe the Chupacabra is just a species of coyote that we've never encountered before that happens to be worldwide. And, these farmers in rural America back in the 80s and, 70s even, and even before that, it was kind of hard to for that news to kind of spread and for a farmer to be able to report that. But if you think about it in the 90s, you've got the internet, cell phones are becoming more of a thing, I mean, and you're able to say, oh, my cow has these weird, looks like it got its blood sucked. What is this? And then another farmer's like, I have the same problem. I have the same problem. I have the same problem. And then it just blows up on the internet. This wild animal called a chupacabra that could be a U.S. government experiment. It's sucking the blood out of it, all these animals. And what kind of makes me believe that a little bit more is like you were saying with the whole goat god theory, the goat demon. If the Puerto Rican people thought that the goat demon was real, they probably didn't really, blow it up as much because it was part of their culture, as part of their religion. They probably just thought they were cursed or something. But it didn't gain traction until the 90s. So I think the Chupacabra is real. I think it could be a form of coyote we've never encountered, because something did strange happen in Puerto Rico, and there have been reports. Like, the reason why it's kind of strange when you were talking about Puerto Rico is because I've always heard of the Chupacabra in like Mexico and like Texas, being out there in the desert. And I'm like, there's a lot of desert in Texas. There's a lot of desert in Mexico and a lot of places that are not tamed by man. No telling what could be out there. So that's why I think the most probable theory is definitely is just some form of coyote we never, experienced. Now the cool badass theory is definitely got to be the goat demon, Could you like imagine just some goat demon dude running around, killing your
I'm
cows and
surprised. I'm surprised you didn't say the coolest one was the alien one.
well, I like that one, but I think goat demon beats alien anytime.
That's fair. If you
You
ever
know?
watch a goat demon in an alien fight, yeah, I do think the goat demon's probably the more interesting party.
Well, speaking about goat demon, we will cover this on the podcast probably. There is. Have you ever heard of Goat Demon Bridge?
No, what's that?
It's this bridge. I think it's Kentucky, Tennessee, somewhere south. And it's like this bridge that people say they've seen like this goat that walks on two legs, and it's like this demon dude. I'm gonna cover on the podcast at some point, and it definitely probably will be a Patreon episode of us going to the Goat Demon Bridge. Um, so yeah, that's what it kind of made me think of because I was like, that's why like I was kind of like goat demon, but the goat demon that I've heard about is like an actual goat and not like a weird dog leather. You know what I just thought about?
What's that?
What if the reason why it's got leather skin is it's not actually skin?
What is it?
What if it's a dommy mommy
Oh man, is
wrapped in
that
a latex suit?
is that going to become a recurring thing on this podcast too?
It's aliens and dommies.
Oh man, I hope that one dies. But me saying that is probably going to make it last even longer. So I'm just going to stop talking about it.
Well, let's see. We got a problematic editor who just likes taking anything out of context and then blowing it up, and then it gets funny and it goes on TikTok where it lives forever.
Well, I'm going to say my theory, and I'm definitely the boring one, but uh, I don't believe in the chupacabra. I think when you look at farm animals, some of the ways they die. So there's been studies that sometimes the way animals die, the way gases have built up in their body and things like that, um, it can form things that look like very precise surgical cuts, but really it's just the way the animal expanded, the body tore apart in a way that looked more precise than you would think. Secondly, there are a lot of like insects and other animals that will come and like drink blood, or at least suck up blood. And so I think there's a lot of other scientific explanations for why you could find an animal drained of blood. Now, I do think something weird happened in Puerto Rico, which is why you saw a lot of them at one time have the animals completely drained of blood. But I think there's natural excuses. Actually, well, I'm gonna send you some pictures in just a second. But I think the sightings of the chupacabra, if you want to call it that, um, kind of actually look a lot like wild coyotes or wild dogs that have the disease mange. Which, if you
Mm.
don't know what the disease mange is, for listeners, or it's when mites, parasitic mites, burrow under the skin, and what those mites cause as they feed on their host is they cause hair loss and they cause the skin to thicken. And so when we're looking at a chupacabra, an animal described as being very hairless or having reptile-like skin, yeah, I can look at you know, well, hopefully you can throw it up after this video. But when you're looking at a dog with mange or a coyote with mange, yeah, it's lost hair because the skin is thickening. It looks very leather-like. So I could see somebody looking out their window late at night, seeing a dog with mange, and being like, "Oh, that's a chupacabra." So, and actually, some corpses of chupacabras have been found, and vast majority of the time, it turned out to be a coyote with mange or another dog with mange. Also, one thing that's reported of dogs and coyotes with manges, or with mange, is that they're generally weaker, so they can't usually chase like the rabbits and stuff that they usually hunt. So it's at that time they'll go after more slow-moving animals, such as goats and
Wow.
sheep, or
Yeah.
possibly even cattle. So, with all of that scientific evidence of things that happen naturally, I just think like if enough circumstances happen at the same time, you could have something like the legend of the Chupacabra appear in 1995 when really there's natural explanation. So, I know I'm being a Debbie Downer, but um,
Don't
There's
worry,
been
guys.
some podcast episodes where like, yeah, I think this one is real, and here's why I
Not
think it's
dear.
real. For this one, I think there's at least enough scientific evidence to say like, okay, it's probably a dog with mange, and people are overreacting. Uh, but that's just my take. So
Yeah. Man, I really do hope this all works out so that we can start the Patreon. So then we can really take Steven into like the middle of the woods of Puerto Rico at like 3 a.m. looking for the Chupacabra.
turn
Like
me to a believer. Make me
I'm
a
just
believer.
like because that's the thing. It's like, some of like like cryptids. Okay, I can kind of believe in cryptids because you know I feel like there are some parts of our world that we have not truly explored well enough that there could be a new creature coming out. Um,
And that's
and
fair.
and that's where I kind of like, and there is like, for example, Bigfoot. Like when we talk about Bigfoot, Bigfoot to me, I can truly believe in Bigfoot because of the historical evidence they give, and that's that there were such things as giant apes that lived in Asia. And then if you remember, there's the ice bridge that formed between Russia and Alaska. A lot of people say that when that formed, those giant apes could have crossed over along with the Native Americans, leading to these giant apes being in America, to where now you got Bigfoot. And so that's why like a lot of these cryptids, I think when it comes down to, as we said, our podcast is ghost stories. Now we've got cryptids, we've got conspiracy theories, we've got mysteries. And when it comes down to kind of, I guess, the two main categories that we have of whether you can believe it or not, and that's between the ghosts and the cryptids. I believe the cryptids more than I believe the ghosts. Now if it involves something demonic, I could believe the ghost story. But majority of the time with the ghost stories, I do kind of feel like sometimes it's kind of faked and staged. But the cool thing about the cryptids is just there's that chance that they're real. There is a definitive chance that you could encounter a chupacabra. There's a definitive chance that you could possibly encounter Bigfoot. You could encounter Nessie. You could encounter a knot deer. And and we'll get into whenever we talk about the Wendigo and we talk about skinwalkers. Those two, I have a different reason on what I believe they could be. My own personal theory. Um, but yeah, that's why I definitely hope this podcast works out and we are able to launch the Patreon, because I am so ready for me to be sitting here. Yeah, Bigfoot's real. Yeah, Chupacabra's real. Yeah, the Bell Witch, totally real. Not deer, totally real. And then Steven's over here like, nah, not real, nah, nah. And then we do the Patreon thing. We're in the middle of like Tennessee hunting the Bell Witch, and Steven gets spanked.
Oh man.
Or we're like hunting, or we're sitting there in the middle of the woods in Puerto Rico, and all of a sudden, we see the Chupacabra like jumping in a tree, and I'm like, "Holy crap, Steve! I was right." And Steve's like,
Yeah,
"That's
you were.
real. That's a Chupacabra. Like, holy crap!"
And hey,
You know?
I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong when I'm presented with new information. And yeah, watching a chupacabra hop from one tree to another right before our eyes, or me being slapped up silly by the bell witch. Yeah, I mean those are two
I
things
mean,
that
and
would
that's
make me believe in those things.
and
So
that's what I think is going to make the like. And I'll say this, it's not a guarantee that when we do these Patreon videos, the way we plan, I guess, to kind of wrap up everything, to kind of close this up. Because do you have anything else to add about the Chupacabra before
no,
we?
yeah, that's pretty much it. So we
That's
can
pretty much
finish
it.
up.
So our idea, I guess, to kind of announce with the Patreon what we're planning to do is, I've watched a bunch of TV shows, Ghost Adventures. I've watched, you know, Destination Unknown or Expedition What at Truth or something like that with Josh Gates. He's had so many come out. I like the format that these people do, and that's the format that we're going to do. So I'm going to say this with the Patreon. There's probably a chance that we will not see anything. Okay. There's probably definitely a chance that we're not going to see anything. However, I will promise you this. There will be a lot of, instead of me and Steven reading off of Reddit or reading off of a website of somebody's random encounter, and this person could just be a total stranger and just made it up, living in their mom's basement. But when we do the Patreon, you're going to hear real stories. You're going to hear real encounters with people. And then you're going to see Steven crap himself in the middle of the woods at 3 a.m. because he heard a twig snap. And you're gonna hear me, you're gonna hear the twig snap, and then you're gonna hear me hyping it up like, oh my gosh, that's the Chupacabra. And then Steve's gonna be like, no, 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 no. There's no way. There's no way. And he's gonna just start freaking out. And so it's gonna be funny. It's gonna be good information. It's gonna be funny. And if you watch plenty of them, I'm betting you there's gonna be a chance one time we're gonna catch something. Like 1 out of 20, we might catch something.
Which,
So,
hey, I mean, 1 out of 20 is not bad. If he can prove that one of these cryptids are real, like, that'd be something no one else has done. So,
dude, I think it'd be. Which cryptid do you think we would probably actually find out of the ones we've talked about so far?
I'm trying to think about the ones we've covered, and then I'm trying to think about the ones we haven't covered. Honestly, I'm probably going to say the Chupacabra. I think some of the big cryptids are going to be very hard to prove because I'm going to be like, okay, well, if it's that big, we would have found it already. But a more smaller creature, I would have been like, well, it's possible that that one was just being elusive. So I'll probably go with the Chupacabra for today. I might change my answer as I study cryptids more. But I would probably say the Chupacabra might be the one that's most likely to exist.
I think the one that would be, I can see the Chupacabra, yes, being the one that's most likely to exist. I think one that kind of is a cryptid that I think we could possibly maybe get something from is the werewolf of Georgia. I know she's dead, but I know they say things about her grave. Like if you're near there on a full moon, you can hear howling. And I think there's a chance we could catch stuff like that pretty easily, at least with her. Now catching a full blown cryptid on camera, probably best chance is Chupacabra. Now, which one would I really kind of like to see? I think it'd be really funny if we found Mothman.
I know, right?
You know, because it's like, because if I sent Steven this really cool song, and if you know the stories, it's like, okay, is something bad gonna happen soon to other people, or is it gonna happen to us? And that's like the scary thing. You know, it'd be funny.
What's that?
Is if we're like, oh my gosh, guys, look, it's Mothman, and it's just Paul dressed up.
I know, right?
We stick some antennas on him.
Hey, you never know.
Look, he's high-fiving his buddy. Owlman. His cousin came to visit. It's Haley dressed up in an owl costume.
All right. Well, hey, I think that will do it for this episode. So, yeah, be on the lookout for more news and information. And yeah, that's all I have. Will, you got anything else?
Make sure you follow us on TikTok at Beyond the Campfire Podcast. Listen to us wherever you can get a podcast, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. And then make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Beyond Campfire. We're a little bit behind on tweeting, but trying my best, man. We really need a social media manager because I don't know what to tweet half the time. I made fun of Steven recently. I did that, yeah.
I did. I need to turn the notifications on for our Beyond the Campfire tweet so I can see what's actually being put out. But
yeah, I did on my personal one, not Beyond the Campfire.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it after.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Thank you, S'mores. We hope y'all have a good weekend. Don't party too hard. Don't drink and drive. That's a bad idea. Get somebody else to drive you. Y'all stay safe and have a good weekend. Thank y'all.